Hey everyone, it's Jake of Jake's Metal Chat. Hope you're all well and welcome to episode 97 of my Metal Vault, where I will be exploring and showing you my favorite albums within the world of metal. As well as talking about the albums, I'll also be talking about the band, so a brief history and any releases leading up to the album that I have picked. And we are going from Canada to Brazil for this episode, and this album right here that has a great mixture of black metal, thrash metal, and death metal. And this is a band that quite a lot of us within the VC will know. And to anyone that is not familiar with this band and also new to the channel, welcome. And thank you to all new subscribers as well. And this is a band that definitely needs more recognition. This album definitely needs to be listened to more because it is just one hell of a release. And without further ado, I will show you the band and the album in question. This is Sarcófago with their 1987 debut, I.N.R.I, and just one hell of a great album. Love this album. Got pictures of the band there and the label it was released on back in the day. Of course, this is a re-release. And yeah, one of my favorite albums within, of course, within the world of metal and, of course, from 1987 as well. Just a brilliant, brilliant album. I will show you the vinyl first because it does have a picture of the band on there, as you can see right there. Of course, the side B and also on side A. Just, yeah, just I'll go over my notes in a minute, but there's so many other things I can say about this album. Also got the lyrics here. Another picture of them there. And then one more in here with the logo right down there and the title of the album. Yeah, definitely a band that very much had a big impact within the underground metal scene in Brazil, alongside so many others. Just name a few: Mutilator and Holocausto, Volcano, and of course, before they became one of the biggest bands, Sepultura were very much part of that as well. And before I get onto the songs on this album and talk about who worked on the album, let's talk about the band themselves, Sarcófago. Of course, from Brazil, they formed in 1985, which was formed by DD Crazy and Butcher. And DD Crazy is this one right here. And I think Butcher might be either this one or that one. I think he might be that one. And of course, joined by Ragnar right there, who was the original vocalist for Sepultura from 84 to 85. He joined this band in March of 85. They split up in 1987, then reformed in 1989, and then split up for the final time in 2000. And before they split up for that first time in 1987, so between 85 and 87, they released two demos and a split. So in 1986 were the two demos and the split. So the first demo was Satanic Lust, released on in February of 1986. Not sure when, but it was released in that month of that year. It was an independent release, and it is a 4-track demo, clocking in at 14 minutes and 59 seconds. And then in June of that same year, they released their second demo, The Black Vomit, also another independent release, and that was a 3-track demo. And of course, a few tracks from this one, a couple of tracks are on this album, and I believe on there as well. Yeah, a few tracks are on here as well from the first demo. And then we get onto the split, Warfare Noise, which of course I mentioned Mutilator and Holocausto. They were on that split with Sarcófago with another band called Chakal. I hope I said that right, but it is Chakal. And when I looked up these bands, they all released an album in the same year of 1987. But before that, on the 30th of November 1986, they did this split. The split was released that year, in that day, in that month. They all had two tracks each. So side A is Shakar and Mutilator. Side B is Sarcófago and Holocausto. And that clocks in at 30 minutes and 42 seconds. And of course, from there, they all released an album in that same year of 1987. And here, once again, is theirs, I.N.R.I. I might be remembering this wrong, but I think I read up that I.N.R.I means something. I think I did. I'm kind of blanking on that, but maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, I'll carry on talking about the album. So this is a 9-track album, and yeah, what a debut to start on. And yeah, it's looking at my notes here, a raw and primal sound that sets the whole tone of the album, and it's just got that consistent flow with that same like raw energy. Got dark, heavy sounding guitars, bass, and drums, and those vocals are just pure nastiness. Ragnar just brings that absolute evilness layered onto the guitar, bass, and drums. Absolutely, just when you hear him, it's just like, damn, this guy is just, yep, just brilliant, just bringing all that aggression to this album, and just absolutely brilliant stuff. So Corso just said Ragnar Antichrist, he was the vocalist. Incubus on bass, Butcher on guitar, and DD Crazy on drums. They had 3 people record this album. The first one did guest vocals on their 1994 album Hate, and also for the band Overdose, who also released an album that same year of 1987. As for music, of course, he did I.N.R.I, as well as Hate and the Worst, and also worked on Sepultura for Bestial Devastation and Schizophrenia. And of course, Overdose, as I mentioned, also worked with Mutilator, Impurity, and the list goes on there. As for the other two, one was in a band, and it was also did guest keyboards for Overdose's album, and also worked on it by doing the engineering, and did the engineering mixing for Sepultura's Bestial Devastation EP. And the other one, who was recording this, called Marcos, is still in a band today and did guest vocals on Overdose's Scars release, as well as working on Shakal, who I've mentioned earlier, and Holocausto for their 1988 album, and for Overdose, and who else? Sepultura and Witch Hammer, Volcano, who I mentioned earlier, for their 1988 release. And then we have Borges, think that's how it's pronounced, Borges, did the photography for, of course, you see this picture on the front there, and also for those and the one in the lyric sheet, as well as for other bands such as, again, Overdose, Sepultura, Witch Hammer. And then onto the artwork, which was Paolo, who did artwork for Headhunter DC. I think I have heard of these guys before, because I remember finding a video on YouTube about the metal scene in Brazil. And a band called Butcher Shakal, who I mentioned earlier, did the artwork for their 1993 release. And yeah, and a fair bit of work around that time. And that's who worked on the recording and did the photography and the artwork for this album. The first two that I mentioned who did recording along with Marcos Wasn't going to try and pronounce their names because I know I want to butcher them. And now let's get on to the album in question. Let's get on to the songs. So the first song on the album, and definitely one of my favorites, Satanic Lust. And that starts off that whole primal raw tone that this album sets for the entire duration. And then we get on to Desecration of Virgin, which is one of the shortest songs on here. Well, the second shortest one, clocking in at 1 minute and 58 seconds. So there are songs that are over 3 minutes, 2 minutes, a minute, and one of the songs that clocks in at over 5 minutes. And that is definitely my absolute favorite on this album. And so from track number 2, which is still set in that tone, Nightmare, which I know they re-recorded for their 1989 EP they did, which I'm blanking on the name on, so I'm going to have a look at that a little bit later. But that is definitely my favorite track overall. I love this version on this album. I also love the version on the EP and the live version that I found of them performing it in 1985. But definitely my favorite one would be the one on here. It's that guitar tone, that haunting guitar tone it sets off, that starts it off, and it's just Wagner just absolutely screaming in anguish. It just fits that entire song. And then from there we got I.N.R.I at track number 4. Still bringing that dark, heavy tone to the album with the guitars, the bass, and the drums and the vocals. Still bringing that absolute heaviness. And then for the last few tracks on this album, track number 5, Christ's Death, clocking in at 3 minutes and 35 seconds. So one of the songs that is over 3 minutes long, along with track 7 and also the very first track. Still bringing that level of brutality, and then carrying on with that, you have Satanus, still bringing that raw and also a lot of speed because it definitely speeds up. But with Nightmare, it sort of kind of goes on the bit of that doom metal side because of how the song starts off, but definitely blends well with what they're doing on this album. So then we get on to track 7, still bringing that speed and aggression, Ready to Fuck. And yeah, just a raw, intense song on this already a raw and intense album. And then we get on to Death Thrash, which is again another fast in your face song. And that's what I liked about this album. It had a mixture of fast, mid-tempo, and also doom-esque sound, especially with Nightmare. And then to finish the album off is the last song, The Last Slaughter. Just perfectly finishes this album off. And yeah, definitely an album I think got overlooked quite a bit because there were a lot of albums that came out in 1987. And one of which that I absolutely love, one of my favorites. Of course, I covered one of their albums in like one of the earliest episodes of this series, and that's Bathory with their album Under the Sign of the Black Mark. Of course, came out the same year as this. And yeah, a lot of great albums came out in 1987, which includes this one. And I'm not sure what else more I can say about it. Of course, the favorite tracks I've already mentioned, Nightmare and Satanic Lust, but definitely I do like the songs. Well, they're my two main favorites. Definitely like the title track and also Death Thrash. Absolutely love that. And unless it's pronounced Death Rash, but I'm going to say Death Rash because that sounds really cool. And just an album, definitely an essential for people that love the black metal, the thrash metal, and the death metal. It blends all three of the genres really well. And like I was saying earlier, Nightmare is adding that doom metal element to it. Absolutely. So just gonna have a bit of water, but it's getting a bit dry. But so my overall view on this album is, of course, heavy, it's evil, it's dark, it's just raw and aggressive, and in some cases, some people have spoken about this album, and people say it goes into the war metal territory, and I can definitely see why, because it does have that fast aggression to it. So like Blasphemy, Revenge, Conqueror, and Bestial Warlust, those bands definitely do that war metal sound justice. And of course, this is a timeless classic. It's a timeless masterpiece. Absolutely, 100% it is. And for anyone that is going back to the bands I mentioned, specifically Blasphemy and Revenge, you're definitely gonna like Sarcófago. Absolutely. And not sure what else more I can say apart from it's just an absolute brilliant album. And again, you need this if you don't have it. Of course, in the description below, I will have a link so you can go and listen to this album for yourself if you've not listened to it yet. Or if you haven't heard it in a long time and you do own it, give it another spin. It definitely deserves more recognition than it got back in the day. It definitely got a lot of people, a lot of the underground metalers in the Brazilian metal scene definitely would have heard this and be like, yeah, absolutely love it. And just thinking like, I don't think it got a lot of recognition outside, but over time it would have gotten a lot more fans. And definitely, I'm one of those many metal fans that loves this. And if this was an album that passed you by back in the day, give it a listen. I guarantee you will like it. If you're more into your just pure aggression, this is definitely an album for you. But like I said, it does have different elements in there. So, and like I mentioned before, my favorite track, Nightmare, definitely has that more, still has the black, the death, and the thrash. A little bit of doom metal in there. That doom metal element in there definitely gives that album another layer of just heaviness. And yeah, just absolutely love this album. Sarcophago and I.N.R.I. And that is it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching as always and listening to me prattle on and trying to think of more words to say about the album, but sometimes it's difficult. But you know, when you got the right words you want to say, you just stick with them. And yeah, this was one of the other albums on my list of notes that I will be talking about. I've got one more on this list, and then I'll be writing out some more for the next lot of albums. Because once I get to my 100th episode, I'll stop for a while and then I'll continue on with it either later this year or early next year. So, thank you once again. If you enjoy this series, don't forget to like, share, and comment on this video. And if you enjoy my content overall, don't forget to subscribe to keep up to date with everything I got coming up. Of course, that is one more episode on this list of albums for this series, collection updates, and the preview to the next festival that's happening here in Bristol. And yeah, that's it. And also once that festival's done, then my video on the festival. So until then, I've been Jacob Jake's Metal Chat. Keep that banner of metal well and truly high. Please do take care of yourselves, and I will see you all in another episode of my Metal Vault.